The mind can get hold of life beyond personality and turn it into a thing that you can manipulate, coerce, manufacture. What I meant was that the mind can get hold of life beyond personality and turn it into a thing that it thinks, I should have probably written, it can manipulate, coerce, manufacture. You can't. However, I do understand the confusion, because in the relative level, there is an approach that's made towards it. With no inquiry, no awareness, the dream of personality just continues undisturbed. You can see that happening in people all around you. So from the relative level, the apparent individual in the story has to turn towards this, just as something in a person's consciousness begins to break out of a dream before waking up. You have to open to the fact that this could be a real thing and find out from your own experience if that is so. That is what we are doing in the group, which is called Life Beyond Personality. Each word in that title is important. In my experience, you can focus on the beyond bit, but not as an escape from the personality bit. Seeing what personality is delivers you to the beyond, which also is just an expression, which also is just what is here now. So the danger there again is a kind of splitting where we're heading for the beyond, but this is the beyond manifesting as this now. That's the important point, which is why I always stress seeing what is. Looking away may be less difficult, but bypassing difficulty is not part of this. That's a really important bit, that. And I think that's where a lot of things go wrong. The idea that spiritual life is, just all angels and bliss and escaping suffering. And I understand again where the confusion comes, because that is an outcome, of course. A lot of suffering that is caused by personality suffering with a capital S can minimize and almost disappear. But on the way to that, there is a part of that journey is a confrontation with it. That's what I'm saying. So ironically, to avoid that confrontation is to avoid I was going to say the goal. There's so many traps in language. Is to avoid what you want. Let's say, we want to avoid suffering. Let's put our cards on the table. We do want to avoid suffering that can be avoided. I think that's a natural thing, but that's different from the kind of suffering that you can't avoid, because that is part of life and is part of what deepens us. You'll be, if you didn't suffer, you'd be pretty shallow. And it's almost like the more suffering you've been able to bear and look at, and the more you've been able to touch the wound, you just deepen. Your living experience goes from the topsoil down to really deep. So they're very different things. You have to use what presents itself, see it, and only then let go of it. To miss any stage of that, to let go before you have seen it, would be a kind of bypassing. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a place and a point at which, when the job is done, it's a bit like when you've squeezed everything out of it, then you move on. So this is not about kind of hitting your head against the brick wall and just surrounding yourself with awful personalities, who are kind of getting at you and trying to cut you down, because that can be negative. So there's a point at which it's done its job. You've learned what you needed to learn from it, and you know that, and then you just say, okay, I'm out now. I've done this, because otherwise it becomes self-hurt or flagellation. That's personality again. I think it's very important what I said at the beginning, that there's life happening to you, and there is this kind of reciprocal thing in you that has to kind of meet it. So the yearning has to be You have to be in alignment with the yearning. And when you are, then you open to whatever's happening that is going to help you. So there is this participation from, there's the absolute side reaching out to you almost, and the relative side receiving it and using it. And of course, it's not really you using it. It's all life. That side of it is life, and the receiving and the using of it is all life. But the system, so you can't choose to use it, but if that's how you're made and you have the yearning and you feel you want to wake up, something in there is nagging you, then it will do that. And then this alignment takes place between that side, and it's almost like digging a tunnel from both ends and you meet in the middle, something like that. So again, this is all difficult because it's like there's nothing you can do, give up seeking and all that. There's so many half-truths and things like that can be very confusing. And that's why I added that bit, that it's not really you opening to it. It's life opening to itself, to get poetic. But still, I would say that has to happen. You can have a situation where life is banging on your door, giving you opportunities, and you're ignoring it. The system, and you could argue then, well, then life's ignoring it, so then it's not going to happen. So that's true too. But something happens when you're in alignment with it, that it's like swimming with the tide. And yeah, already I'm kind of running into problems with language here, but I think you get the idea of what I'm saying. Okay, so then, right, so is this a method? I suppose you could call that seeing a method in a broad sense of the word, but method usually signifies a kind of linear progression where progress is mapped out in clear stages and a result is guaranteed. So the mind loves the safety of a method, but that is not the case with this at all. This is a love affair. It does not bow to logic. If life wants to wake you up, it will do it in its own way. A teacher cannot know what that is. But having walked that path, they can perhaps recognize certain twists and turns, and so provide some guidance along the way and point out any pitfalls. I think that's definitely true. I think that's what I can do, but only in the right circumstances with the right person. What I mean by the right person is someone with readiness. People want different things out of this. Some want a system, some want to prove they're right, some want to just confirmation of where they are, and there's all sorts of things. So that synthesis between the teacher and the student, whatever you want to call it, has to be in place, and that is not controllable from my side. It's all beyond me. You know, the idea of the all-powerful teacher who could turn anyone on to this is, you know, a fallacy, really. I think that's why readiness is so damn important. The books provide a kind of map of the territory, but your experience of walking it is unknown and is between you and life. The map can't make you wake up or tell you how your journey will be. When I said there's no map, I referred to how this will happen or not in everyone's individual case. Yeah, it's all such a mystery. Everybody's got their own twists and turns, and they've got to hit this first, or they've got to drop that before they can hear this. There's all sorts of things like that that can come in. There's a famous American painter called Bob somebody or other who had a very successful TV program teaching people how to paint landscapes. He had a very defined method, what brushes to use to draw twigs or trees, what stroke technique to create a water-like effect, etc. It worked. If you followed him closely, you could learn to paint facsimiles of his style. They weren't great works of art by any means, but they were quite impressive in their own way. Maybe one way to put it, what I'm doing is I'm pointing out where the brushes are, but you have to paint your own unique paintings. There really isn't a method. There isn't. There's a map. There's a kind of map, but the map's just a starting point. You walk in the map, like I said, is you know, everyone's got their own path and it's going to be different, but the reference points I give will you know, hopefully be a constant in the background to help understand what the journey is. They are true reference points, I would say. But you know, so putting the map aside, there isn't a method. There's not okay, I did say inquiry, if you want to call inquiry a method, didn't I? So is that a method? Is inquiry a method? For me, it's just like a natural happening that it certainly, I would say it's the only thing that can happen that helps this to give birth to itself. People say, does meditation help you wake up? And some people say, you've probably heard this, no, but it can make you more accident prone, more prone to accident happening. Well, you know, again, we're talking about this like the absolute and then the relative, and then we're talking about the relative end of this. And I do feel that because, you know, the key to this is seen through the identification with personality. So there's a psychological part of that. As far as I'm concerned, it can only help, because anything that is seeing through your personality, which is kind of what's keeping you unawake, is helpful. I mean, if I look back at me, I guess it's almost like I saw enough that one day the whole thing just gave way, like a floor, you know, a rotten floor in an apartment. There were dodgy bits and some bits were hanging on, and suddenly the whole thing just went. So, you know, in a way, from the relative level, I would say there are things you can do, and that's what we're doing to make you accident prone, to make it the floor get thinner so it can one day collapse. You know, if you jump to the absolute level, you would then say, but you're not responsible for that. You're not responsible for having the yearning, for having the drive to do it, for any of it. But still, it comes back to that theme of like swimming with the tide. And if that yearning has been put in you, all you're doing is living out what you are. If what you are is programmed to find this, by living what you are, that's the way it's going to happen. You know, take away the personality identification, what's left is the waking up. So you're just creating, by taking away, you're just taking away an obstruction. And of course, it's just an idea and it's a false thing. It's not a real thing. But in the relative level, it bloody feels like a real thing, doesn't it? And you're trapped by it and you suffer because of it. So the laser beam on that personality, which kind of thins it and breaks through it, is just how it gets revealed, I would say, and revealed in a way that it can stay and not just be an accident and a kind of one-off experience that you would forever try to recapture. I think it's a very different thing when personality is seen through than when, and then this is revealed, than when you just have an experience. So I used to have the experiences, I know I'm sure you've all had them, but I used to have pretty strong openings as a kid, as I wrote about in the book. And I don't have them now, but they were really strong. And I think they were strong because the contrast was strong between, you know, asleep and awake was just so contrasty. It was like black and white, day and night. And now it's not like that. There's the thing that caused the contrast has been kind of thinned out so much that there isn't so much. It's like the absolute is just like there behind a very thin layer of the appearance of this. So in the end, what's the conclusion? Well, you just live what you are. And if you live what you are, if you love something, if you love, if you have an experience of it, you have a love for it, you follow what you love. How can you? That's what we do. So it's just a natural thing. You can't, why would you not do that? You just follow what you love because that's the way you're made. You can't then say it's a method because it's just love.